This is the brief on Chelsea's preseason strategy and Mykhaylo Mudryk's return. We're watching Chelsea manager Xabi Alonso navigate an absolutely crucial preseason tour in Hong Kong, trying to balance a jammed attacking lineup while suddenly welcoming back a star from a nearly 2-year suspension. First, let's look at Alonso's immediate tour strategy. He's prepping the squad in Hong Kong for a match against Juventus, integrating new signings like Danny Welbeck into an already packed roster. Honestly, it's kind of like trying to fit way too many star players into a tiny lifeboat. Someone's absolutely going to get squeezed out. Second, let's talk about the immediate impact of Mykhaylo Mudryk's return. The winger is suddenly back on the grass after a 4-year doping ban for Meldonium was overturned. He hasn't played since November 2024. So how do you manage a player who hasn't seen competitive action in almost 2 years? Well, Alonso is prioritizing Mudryk's emotional and mental reintegration over sheer physical fitness right now. He can be selected for the Juventus game, but a full 90 minutes is definitely too early. Finally, we have the long-term strategic plan. Throwing him straight into the intense Premier League is just too risky. So Chelsea is sending him on loan to their French sister club, Strasbourg. A move to League One helps him rebuild his fitness, confidence, and market value safely away from brutal English media pressure, while keeping him away from domestic rivals like Coventry City. Ultimately, Alonso's biggest preseason test isn't just about winning friendlies, but successfully rebuilding a forgotten star's career.
Imagine losing your driver's license for 4 years, right? And then out of nowhere, the city just quietly raises the speed limit and hands your keys back.
Yeah, it's wild. Just a total reset.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that jarring reality is basically what Chelsea's Mykhaylo Mudryk woke up to this July. So today, we are doing a deep dive into how an £89 million asset went from total exile to flying back into a Premier League squad literally overnight.
I mean, the whiplash here is just incredible. If we go back to October 2024, Mudryk was hit with this devastating ban.
4 years, right?
Yeah, full 4 years. He tested positive for trace amounts of Meldonium, which, for context, is this heart medication that boosts oxygen uptake. So it genuinely looked like a career ender.
Oh, for sure. Everyone thought he was done.
Exactly. But then, during his appeal to CAS, WADA actually updated their technical document. They raised the minimum reporting threshold.
So suddenly his test doesn't even trigger a violation.
Right. That tiny trace amount wasn't classed as intentional doping anymore. Legally, it was just reclassified as contamination, so the FA and WADA just lifted his ban with immediate effect.
Which is great for him, but, I mean, it creates an insane logistical nightmare for the club.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he was cleared overnight on a technicality, he had zero time to actually physically ramp up. Like, he went straight from training completely alone in exile onto a plane to join the squad's preseason tour in Hong Kong.
Yeah, and that put manager Xabi Alonso in a massive bind, honestly.
I can imagine.
You'd normally expect a manager to just immediately run a returning player through all these grueling fitness tests, gauge their metrics. But Alonso publicly stated he is solely prioritizing Mudryk's feelings and emotions right now.
Wait, really? His feelings? I have to challenge that approach a bit.
Go for it.
I mean, empathy is great, but we're talking about the elite level of the Premier League here. Isn't prioritizing a player's feelings over their physical readiness a massive risk, especially with the season just weeks away?
Well, not if you really understand the psychology of isolation.
Okay, how so?
So, when a player is completely removed from team training for almost 2 years, their spatial awareness on the pitch actually degrades.
Oh, wow. I never thought about that.
Yeah, their subconscious trust in where their teammates are positioned just kind of evaporates. So emotional reintegration, like feeling safe and instinctively part of the unit again, is a biological prerequisite before you can even begin to address elite physical fitness.
That actually makes a lot of sense when you put it like that.
Right. And Alonso is applying this cautious methodology across the board with other new arrivals, too. For example, he's deliberately holding back Jordan Henderson right now.
Ah, because of the arm injury from the World Cup.
Exactly. He's carefully assessing that rather than rushing Henderson into competition. It's all about long-term integration over short-term panic.
Okay, so rebuilding that mental foundation first makes sense. But eventually, Mudryk does have to actually play football.
He does, yeah.
And Chelsea's attacking line is suffocatingly crowded right now. You've got new signings like Danny Welbeck, Morgan Rogers, and Pedro Neto. So word is the plan is a loan move to Strasbourg.
Yes, which is a perfect use of the Blueco multi-club ownership model, if you think about it.
Right, sending him to their sister club in France.
Exactly. And it's not just about sending him somewhere familiar. It's a highly calculated tactical move. Strasbourg's current setup actually mimics Alonso's system.
Also, it's like a sandbox environment.
Pretty much. It allows Mudryk to relearn the Chelsea playbook in a much lower stakes environment in League One while basically being shielded from the brutal English media.
Right, but let's be real here for a second.
Okay.
Is loaning a former £89 million star out to a sister club really this genius protective strategy? Or is it just blatant proof that Chelsea fundamentally does not trust him to perform in the Premier League right now?
Oh, it's absolutely a lack of trust, and understandably so, honestly.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
If a player with that price tag truly possessed an elite, ready-to-go mentality, they would theoretically walk right back into the squad.
Right, they wouldn't need a stepping stone.
Exactly. So instead, Blue Coals is using their multi-club model to essentially warehouse a depreciating asset.
That's a harsh way to put it, but yeah.
It is, but it guarantees Mudryk the minutes he desperately needs to rebuild his match sharpness. And crucially, it does so without compromising Chelsea's immediate tactical ambitions in London.
So, just to recap for you listening, we have a bureaucratic loophole closing a very dark chapter, a manager prioritizing psychological rebuilds over wind sprints, and a strategic loan functioning as a high-price safety net.
It really is an unprecedented scenario in modern football. You just don't see this happen.
You really don't, but
Yeah.
Think about this before you go. Mudryk has effectively been parked in the garage for nearly 2 years now.
Yeah, a long time to be away.
Right, so he's completely avoided the brutal, bone-crunching wear and tear of English football.
That is very true.
Could this forced break, as mentally agonizing as it obviously was, have actually preserved his physical prime? Like potentially extending his career much longer than if he'd been getting kicked around every weekend for the last 2 years.
Oh, that's a fascinating angle.
Something for you to chew on. Catch you on the next deep dive.
If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please consider subscribing to Decision 45. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep creating high-quality content just like this. Don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe so you never miss an update.